Welcome, everybody. It's Monday, March 25th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. How are we all doing today? Hello, all. Let me get my chat open. My chat is not open. That's annoying. One moment here. Chat. There is chat. All right. You should open in a second. It usually takes like a, magical few seconds for you to appear. But at least it's there. One quick sec here. And then I will get my TikTok rolling as well. There you are. Hello, all. Hello. Hello. Oh, let me turn up my volume. Okay. Volume is up, so it should be adjusting shortly. All right. There we go. Volume should be adjusting shortly, so fret not. Let me get TikTok rolling here. All right. Evil TikTok. Oops. I changed my coffee talk. Hold on. Hey, guys. Ukraine war update. Ukraine war news. Let's call it Ukraine war news just for something different. All right, live goal. Hey, Brendy. I think we can do more bunny ears. I think we do more bunny ears. I like the bunny ears. I think the bunny ears are funny. Let's put bunny ears. All right, oops. All right, bunny ears, go live. There we go. And of course, I probably have the subscription on still, which Ashley would let me know. Let me make sure. Subscription off. Nope. Sub only live off. Okay. Should be working. All right. Let me get this flipped. Mirror my video. There we go. All right. Well, let's see if it's working. Anyway, hello all. Blaze in Calgary. Lovely. Always jealous of that. Hey, Anthony, Ireland. Yeah, they've been hitting a number of oil refineries. I'm not even sure which one at this point. They've been hitting several, which is good news. But we'll talk about that today. Hey, Christopher. Subscribed 1 month over on TikTok. Thank you for that. Anyway, hello all. I will do my quick intro and we'll get rolling. Thank you, Mark Starr. Since the TikTokers are rolling in, thank you, Crazy American. Big Hawk, creepy as ever in a good way. Ava. Who else we got here? Let me see. Who have we got on the... thank you, Marie. Thank you, Elle. Sasha is roaming around the house looking for evil. Thank you. Is that Alan? Thank you, Alan. Thank you, John S. No, she's at the front door looking for her buddy. Thank you, Ellie. Her buddy, the neighbor dog that she loves. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Robert. So she's walking back. I can hear her. Now she's coming back from that. Sasha is a little over 14, Yael. So fortunately not old yet, but obviously old at the same time, So what do you do? All right, guys, let me do my intros and get rolling here. So we've got a good critical mass of folks. Welcome, everybody. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my nightly show I do from Washington, D.C., Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern. Hello. What you doing, crazy? You all right? Okay. She was just like, I had some sign I got from Ukraine. I've got you. You're saying hello. You're saying hello whether you like it or not. Oh my God, there's the hello. Hi, you're okay. She loathes when I pick her up. Absolutely loathes it. Hi. And you're avoiding the camera like the plague as well, aren't you? All right, yeah? I'll put you down. There. Okay. All right. You want to go out? Of course you want to go out again because now you're going to go eat dirt. She's on kind of an eating dirt thing lately. She's even got a little on her face, and she's pissing me off. All right, anyway, that would be Sasha the Wonder Dog. So welcome, everybody. I am John Aravosis. This is my show I do Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern, where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. Where are we at? Today's day 759 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation. Let me start by thanking all of the subscribers, especially. You guys support my work. Also with the gifts. Lots of gifts coming in on TikTok from Pedro and Big Hawk. Aviation, Alex. Oh my God, so many. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Robert, I think I finally got you, Robert. Yeah, I got you earlier. And Ellie. So that Richard with the rose. Thank you. But yeah, so the, quick thank yous. Yeah, so quick thanks to the subscribers on YouTube and TikTok. Thank you, Aviation. Let me look at some of the, just for fun, I like to sort of call you guys out at the beginning. Some of my YouTube subscribers. We got a lot of you guys today. Chris, Ann, Carl, Brendy, Sick, Chris, Sick, Mike, Blaze, James, Anthony, Marie, Flying, Carl, Brendy. Okay, now we're repeating. Drake, Ben. Okay. Susan, horrible. Mad Mike, hey guys, thank you guys, and TikTokers as well. It's funny, these are my new reading glasses. They're not really new. I mean, they're new, but they're not new. Oh, thank you, Martin, for the bunny ears, and thank you, Pizditz, for the hearts. I basically go and I get my reading glasses from Costco. So they're very cheap. I buy extras to have because they're cheap, and they break when they want to break. My other ones just broke. I've had these for a few years, and I'd never tried them, but I think they're kind of cool. You know what they remind me of? They remind me of that fashion lady who just died. Thank you, Lori. The woman who was a big sort of New York City fashion icon who wore like she died at like 102, the really funky clothes, and she had the big black glasses, but they were super thick. Obviously not like these. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Courtney. But it kind of reminds me of her in a way. Like, I kind of like the look. It's not a bad, especially with like the white and the black. White and black is not necessarily my look, and these glasses aren't either, but I'm kind of liking it. So anyway, all right, guys. So yeah, let's get rolling. So thank you guys for joining. So we're going to start talking about the Moscow terror attacks, because that's still kind of the big story of the weekend. There's been a lot of other news. Ukraine, thank you, Jeff. Ukraine has done several attacks against the Russians we're going to talk about. But let's start with the terror attack in Moscow. So Friday, there is a huge attack against a Russian shopping center. And it's a shopping mall outside of Moscow. There is a large concert hall there, too, that houses around 6,000 people. There was a rock concert or some kind of a classic rock or some kind of concert, thank you, Cheryl, about to take place. So the hall was presumably full. 4 terrorists come into the shopping area, thank you, Dawn, and just opened fire. I mean, it was horrible. They had automatic weapons, opened fire on just civilians, children, you name it, men, women, children. They posted the video, or somebody posted the video on social media. Thank you, World and Adventure, for the gifts, and Dawn and Cheryl. They posted on social media. It was really horrific. I mean, I'm not even going to describe, certainly can't show you, but I'm not even going to describe it. You can imagine just photos of people, bad stuff. The Russians immediately tried to blame the Ukrainians. No evidence at all that it was the Ukrainians. All the evidence points to ISIS, in addition to ISIS itself, Islamic State, right, the big terrorist group in the Middle East. ISIS itself claimed credit for the attack. The Russians refused to, I shouldn't say the Russians refused to believe it. The Russians refused to acknowledge it publicly. Iris Affle, that is her name, WC, thank you. Exactly. The Russians refused to acknowledge it publicly. Publicly, they kept hinting that it was Ukraine. They also kept hinting that it was America and the Brits because, they've got to do this, right? And up until today, and finally, and the funny part is, the news today is spinning it as though Putin has finally come out and acknowledged that ISIS did it. He didn't do anything of the sort. Let me read you the quote from Putin today, okay? He once again, literally he advanced nothing. Thank you, James. I really appreciate that. Listen to this. The quote from Putin. It is necessary to get answers to a number of questions whether radical Islamists really decided to strike Russia. Okay, I'm going to read you the rest of the quote. But thank you, Anastasia. He's not saying we think it was ISIS. He's saying people are saying it's ISIS, right? The US, Europe, ISIS. We need to get the answer to that question, right? To that question. How crazy is that, right? Thank you, Succeed. He goes on to allege that the attack was carried out by ISIS on behalf of a client, meaning some country did it, right? Some country, thank you, Leonardo, some country put the ISIS or the Tajiks, right, whoever, up to the attack, and they're the ones. Now, mind you, we all know he means Ukraine, and he means the U.S. and the Brits. Now, why do I say that? Because all weekend, the foreign ministry spokesperson, among others, was putting out the message that it was Ukraine and it was America. She put out a ridiculous statement earlier today or yesterday where she invoked the Kennedy assassination. Yes, thank you, Dark Phoenix. The assassination of President Kennedy back in 1963. She invoked to prove that maybe it wasn't ISIS. It was absolutely bizarre, but I want to read this to you. Let me see here. She says that, first, she kept urging the U.S. to think again. Thank you, Running. Think again about who could have done this. Don't just assume it was ISIS, right? She then goes on and says, let me, real quick. Oh, yeah. So she basically says that America cannot be trusted to say that it was ISIS because we don't even know who killed President Kennedy, she says. By the way, we totally know who killed President Kennedy. It was 60 years ago. We totally know who did it. But she goes, we don't even know. Listen to this. If only they could sort out the assassination of their own President Kennedy so quickly. But no, for more than 60 years, they have not been able to find out who killed him. Or maybe ISIS too. She's like saying, I think she's saying maybe ISIS killed Kennedy. Like, oh, America just says it's ISIS, right? Like, ha ha ha. Who thinks it's ISIS? ISIS thinks it's ISIS, by the way. Or will they delay for another 60 years with specifics, playing with any constructive uncertainty? She then goes on and blames liberal Democrats in Congress and America for financing the terrorist activities of the Kyiv organized crime group. Just blah, blah, blah. The Russians are playing a game. Now, a couple different reasons why they are. I have told you guys before, a couple different points here. Russia is not a democracy. Russia is an authoritarian dictatorship. It is not as bad a dictatorship as North Korea. That is the worst of, that's like a Stalinist, horrific dictatorship, right? The North Korea. Russia is still a dictatorship. It's more authoritarian, but it's a dictatorship. There aren't free elections. You can get arrested for anything, which they do. Simply criticizing the war gets you thrown in jail. Putin kills his political enemies. We know that he does. We know he's killed journalists. We know he has killed political dissidents. We know he tried to kill Alexei Navalny 4 years ago. And then we know that Navalny died mysteriously a few weeks ago, right? So, and then, of course, there's, what's his face, right? Head of the Wagner group, Prigozhin, who tries to overthrow Putin. Putin reaches a deal with him, and then magically Prigozhin's plane blows up 2 months later, right? So anyway, Putin, right, not a democracy. The problem for Putin is this is highly embarrassing. Strong men can't afford to be weak men. Putin can't afford to have this happen on his watch, and it just did. Now, not only did this happen on his watch, thank you, Sean, and make him look bad, okay? Because obviously, right, if a terrorist attack happens, it means your government didn't catch it, right? Not only does that look bad, but the worst part is that the Russians were warned. The Americans and the Brits warned the Russians 2 weeks before the attack happened that someone was preparing an imminent terror attack. At the time we said imminent, we thought it was happening in the next 48 hours. We said that specific of concern were concert halls, which is kind of amazing, right? Because it was a concert hall that was attacked. And we know that Putin turned around and 3 days before the attack finally came out and just blasted the Americans and the Brits and said that the report was false. The warning our governments put out about a potential terrorist attack against a concert hall in Russia, in Moscow especially, was false. And it was propaganda. He called it blackmail, which I'm not quite sure where the blackmail thing comes from. Like, that doesn't quite work in English, blackmail, right? But nonetheless, Putin said it was fake. 3 days after Putin says it's fake, dog wants to go outside and eat more dirt because that's who she is. After Putin says it's fake, he turns around, 3 days later, ISIS or someone, right, attacks and horrific terrorist attack. Again, in an authoritarian state, you can't afford to have this kind of stuff happen because it makes you look weak. It's especially bad when the West, who is, the arch nemesis, right, of Russia, from a Russian perspective at least, when it's the Western governments, the Brits especially, the Brits and the Americans, who are like the two big bad guys for them, for the Russians, that the Brits and the Americans were the ones who told you that something was coming and you ignored them. So that's why they're blaming us, and they're trying to blame us, they're trying to blame the Brits, but they're also trying to blame the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainian thing is more simple. Honestly, they're just trying to blame Ukraine because they need a boogeyman. I mean, we're in the third year of this war, guys. This is the third year of the war. As I just said, how many days are we? We're 759 days into this war. The Russians were supposed to win this war in like 3 to 10 days. They didn't. They even brought their dress uniforms to Kyiv. They thought they were so convinced they were going to win that they brought their dress uniforms. And the idea was, within a few weeks of the invasion back in February of 2022, thank you, adventurers, the Russians thought they were going to win so quickly, they brought their pretty dress uniforms so they could do a big parade in Kyiv and show that they took over the country, right? I mean, that's how confident they were. Anyway, you get it. So at this point, they need to blame somebody, and they would rather blame the Ukrainians, because here's the other thing, too. Islamic State, they were warned about Islamic State, right? And they didn't believe it. If it ends up being the Ukrainian, there's no way it's the Ukrainians. But if it ends up being the Ukrainians, like if Putin keeps claiming it's the Ukrainians, then you've got the American and the British warnings were actually part of a false flag or something crazy conspiracy thing, right? Right? That the Americans and the Brits warned you because they knew, like they were part of it, right? Because we were helping the Ukrainians. So that gives you more cover because now, well, how could Moscow have known? You know, it's one thing for it to be ISIS, but those evil Americans, they sort of, one of the things, thank you, Adam, one of the things Putin gets away with a lot, which I find kind of fascinating, is constantly blaming the fact that things aren't going well in Ukraine for him by talking about, well, we're fighting NATO, you know, and I've talked about this before. Saying we're fighting NATO, so of course things are hard, we're not doing as well, seems kind of crazy, right? Because isn't that an admission that you'd think a strong man wouldn't want to admit? That's like us saying, you know, we're losing to Russia in some way because, well, we're fighting Russia and all of its allies. Well, I would hope we could beat Russia and all of its allies, right? And if you're Russian, you would hope that Russia can beat NATO. Otherwise, you're admitting that Russia is weaker than NATO. That's not, again, strongman. Strongmen shouldn't be admitting those kind of things. In any case, that's kind of where we are on the terrorist attacks. The number now is up to 137 dead, obviously hundreds wounded. Just looking here if there's anything else. I don't think I've got anything else on that. All right, let's move on. And guys, as always, please keep the gifts coming. The gifts on TikTok, the gifts on YouTube, the subscriptions especially help finance my work. I do this for free. I do it full time. And I am quite literally able to do this because you guys make it possible. Like aviation just gave me the fun little, little ears on my head. Was it aviation and actually I thought it was aviation. Now I'm seeing the swan. Thank you, swan person, and thank you, Ellie and John. But please do keep the gifts coming, guys. And if you can, do a subscription. Whether it's subscription on TikTok, subscription on YouTube, but basically subscriptions are a way where you commit to donate a certain amount a month, and mine are pretty cheap. I mean, it's like $4.99 on YouTube, the cheapest. I think it's $6.99 on TikTok, because TikTok takes a lot more than YouTube does. That's why I had to be higher on TikTok. But you donate monthly, and it's a way of supporting creators who you like, who are doing work full time. And frankly, like I said, it's not a hobby, it's a job. So if you can help me out, I'd appreciate it. But please keep it coming. And thank you. And by the way, apparently, thank you, Lori. I did not know, but apparently you can buy subscriptions as a gift for others on TikTok, according to the mods. I was not aware of this, but they say you can. So I know on YouTube you can. You can buy gift subscriptions for 1 month at a time that other folks can get. Thank you, Lise. And YouTube will automatically sort of dole them out to people randomly for a month, which is kind of cool. Brad asks a super chat question. Do you talk about other political issues on this show or just Ukraine? Mostly Ukraine. When there's other news that kicks in, thank you, Blue Ariel. When there is other, and I talk about my dog too, who was just trying to eat dirt. When there's other big news that happens, I talk about it. When there's big Trump news, when there's big election news. With the U.S. election coming closer and closer, I will be talking more about the U.S. election because I think it's too important. Thank you, Wayne. And I'm not sure that there's a way around not talking about the U.S. election as we get closer. So most of what we do is Ukraine, but depending on the day I branch out. But as I said, as we get closer to the election, that news is going to be more important. So we'll be talking about it as well. Oops, let me grab my piece of paper that fell down. That's where the 5th page went. All right. I'd lost my page 5 of notes for the show today, and that's where they were. So up, and thank you, Otanbot. Oh, hey, Otanbot. Otanbot just became a Patriot launcher, as did Kara. Thank you, guys, which is one of the subscription levels over at YouTube. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. So let's do a little more here. Ukraine did several attacks over the weekend, which was very interesting. Mr. Death, that's a really good question. Mods, maybe try to remind me of that once we get to the Q&A period a little later on. I want to sort of get through some of the news first that I'm talking about, and then but I don't want to, that's a good question. I don't want to forget that. Or feel free to ask again later when I get to the Q&A. Thank you, Arifa. Now, I may not have said, typically the way I do this is I try to sort of go through the news that I think matters first to tell you guys, and then the second half of the show, we hang for, the show goes like an hour 15, an hour and a half easily. Second half of the show, I take your guys' questions and everything else. So if I don't get to your questions now, don't be offended. I will get to questions second half of the show. So Ukraine this weekend. Ukraine did a lot of attacks this weekend. They hit several oil refineries. Now, that's kind of interesting because last week, you might recall, I was talking about the fact that the Americans, according to the Financial Times, which is a very good financial publication, kind of like the Wall Street Journal of England, I would call the Financial Times, very good publication. They reported from multiple sources that the Biden administration had told the Ukrainians, stop attacking Russian oil refineries, that it risks raising the price of oil in the world, which could hurt Biden's reelection. And it also was their argument. And it also, they also said the Americans were worried that the Russians might retaliate by going after other oil pipelines. I believe a pipeline through Kazakhstan that provides some oil to the West. The Americans were afraid that the Russians might try to blow it up or something as retaliation. That evening, that story comes out that afternoon. That evening, the Ukrainians went after another oil refinery, and over the weekend, they went after another oil refinery. So from my perspective, the good news is the Ukrainians kind of said to the Americans, which I don't blame them. If you're a Ukrainian right now, you shouldn't pull punches going after the Russians. You should do attacks that matter. Right? You shouldn't just do attacks that feel good. I've always said this from the beginning, right? There should be a reason you're doing an attack. It should fulfill some larger military goal. But in terms of hitting oil, energy, and I've said this before, Russia's budget, okay? So the federal budget of Russia, the big national budget that provides for, domestic stuff, that provides for all the military, for everything, right? Their big national budget. 40% of that budget comes from energy, meaning the Russian supplies of oil and natural gas, and it's got a lot. It's one of the big suppliers in the world. That Russia's sale of those abroad raised the money to pay for the Russian budget. 40% of the Russian budget comes from sales of energy. So if you want to hurt Russia, if you want to make it more difficult for Russia to wage war in Ukraine, you go after energy. This is why, obviously, we've tried to sanction Russian oil and things internationally to try to take away some of the money, not very effectively in some ways, because Russia's still getting a lot of money from it. But from Ukraine's perspective, you want to hurt Russia more generally. In other words, you want to exact a toll from Russia for the war so that they're paying a price for it, just as a tit for tat, basically. 2, you want to take away the money that finances the war, right? That's oil. So that would make sense for Ukrainians going after refining and other kind of oil facilities. And 3, oil is quite literally used by planes and tanks and other military equipment that's attacking Russia, right? They use the oil to make fuel for the tanks and the planes and the armored personnel carriers, you name it. But they also use the oil for lubricants and things that all the sort of machines of war use. So there's a lot of good reasons why why Ukraine would want to go after Russian oil refineries, and they are. One refinery this weekend, I believe the distance was around 1,500 kilometers, which is maybe 1,000 miles. It's really far. I mean, they really have been getting some good distance. Well, in any case, this weekend they hit another refinery, took out half of its refining potential, which is great. According to Reuters, they're still at maybe 7% of Russia's refineries have been knocked out by the Ukrainians this first quarter. That's not nothing. It's not a ton, though. Thank you, Vicky. Right? The question is, can Ukraine do more? Okay, 2 questions, actually. Can Ukraine sort of increase the rate of attack, right, against these? Increase the rate. Let me rephrase this. Increase the success rate, which could mean more attacks. It could mean more efficient attacks. It could mean you attack in a way where you're able to get around Russian defenses or whatever, right? So it's either more drones or smarter drones to cause more damage to the Russian refineries. Also, the question of how quickly can the Russians repair these refineries, right? Because, if Russia's refineries, you're 7%, 8%, but then they fix it and now only 5% are out, right? Your attacks help, but they may keep it at 7%. Thank you, Arifa. And if you're Ukraine, you want the percentage of refineries that are out to keep going higher and higher and higher. So anyway, we shall see. But that's what's up with all the attacks this weekend. Also this weekend, thank you, Misty, for the gift on TikTok. I almost forgot. Ukraine hit 3 different Russian warships. 2 of them were large landing ships. One of them reportedly was destroyed. The other one was damaged. The Ukrainians are still kind of looking at what the damage was to the second ship. They also reportedly hit a Russian warship, an intelligence ship. So a ship used for gathering intelligence, which was also damaged. So that's good news as well. Let me look a little more here. Oh, this was an interesting story I saw right before I came on with you guys. Oh, by the way, I wanted to show you. So I don't know if Rowan's here tonight, but one of our wonderful longtime member followers, whatever, member of our community, we'll call her that, Rowan, her daughter made this mug, but basically like design, I mean, she didn't make the mug, but her daughter is 13 years old and in school designed the whole graphic of the mug. And it's really pretty. Like it's a beautiful graphic, but she did this like beautiful Ukrainian mug and sent it. So just wanted, I don't know if Rowan's here tonight. If not, actually mods, do you want to grab a picture on TikTok if you would of me holding this up? Because that way we can, where can we buy it? I know, I'll tell her that. That way we can show her that we had it live during the show, which would be neat. So if somebody wants to grab this and maybe send me a copy, we can show her that we show. Good, thanks, Ash, because I want to show her that we did it on the show. But yeah, so very cool. That was very cool. And Jens, thank you, Jens. Jens is now a Patriot Launcher, which is one of our members over at YouTube. Thank you for that, Jens. I know, I'll let her know people, she's going to laugh. I'll let her know people said they want to know where they can buy them. But no, isn't it beautiful? Like, I think just the color choice as well is just, and mind you, 13-year-old kid designed this. I mean, really, it's absolutely beautiful. I know, we should sell them. We should set up a business for her, you know? Thank you, guys. Thank you, Lena. Trying to help if I can. Thank you, Marcy. All right. Let's go on. Oh, I know I was going to tell you. So the story I saw right before coming on tonight, listen to this. This is very interesting. There's a report that a swarm of Ukrainian drones struck the Novocherkassk thermal power plant in the Rostov region of Russia this morning. It's the largest thermal power plant in southern Russia. I'm very intrigued by this because a thermal power plant is not an oil refinery. To date, the Ukrainians seem to have been going after oil refineries. What I'm not sure about is whether the Ukrainians are trying to take out power to like just large cities in Russia in the same way that Russia's doing it to Ukraine, or what I'm not sure what the strategy is here if this report is true. I would say if the goal is to take out power to large cities in Russia, that's not necessarily a bad military goal, in that that's what Russia's doing to Ukraine, right? So certainly Ukraine is justified in doing it back. Thank you, Crystals. Russia took out the power to Kharkiv this weekend, and apparently, and then the power plant, the hydroelectric plant down in Zaporizhia, they said it's going to take months to try to repair it. I mean, sort of, disaster what the Russians did there. The only question becomes for Ukraine is it as sort of efficacious? Is it as beneficial to go after these like thermal power plants versus the oil? Because arguably, thank you, Crystals, for the gift, and Black Opal, and Sear for the rose, and Ernie for the heart, and Super Hornet. If you're Ukraine, going after oil has multiple benefits, right? You go after oil, maybe some of it's meant for heating oil, so you're still hitting that side. Certainly some of it's for export. You're taking away the export dollars. Taking away the export dollars hurts the Russian budget. Hurting the Russian budget hurts Russia's ability to fund the war. Thank you, Tigger. And as we said, oil also affects Russia's production of energy that it's used for fuel for the war and lubricants for the war. Going after the thermal plants that give people energy in their homes isn't as beneficial, is the only thing. Thank you, Tigger. So in any case, I'm not trying to criticize. I'm just saying, you always want to sort of think, oh, there you are there. I was showing everybody the mug. People were, let your daughter know, people were literally asking where to buy the mug. Rowan is with us on YouTube today. Thank you, Shane. It was very funny. A number of people were like, I would totally buy that mug. So let her know. It's beautiful. I love it. Thank you. And thank you, Jake, for the, Jake just gifted one of the memberships over on YouTube that Jillian got. Excellent. So remember, guys, once you get the memberships on TikTok or YouTube, you immediately have access to the emojis. So we have some sort of fun personalized emojis that I've loaded up to both of them. And and you get access to the weekend show. The Saturday show I do almost every Saturday. So feel free to join us there too. My mug shot, exactly. All right, a little bit more news here. Oh, so this was kind of a freaky story. Thank you, Strawman. And please keep the gifts coming and the subscriptions, guys. I appreciate it. So really, another weird story. So the Russians fired another missile cruise missile that entered Polish airspace, flew for like a couple miles, and then went into Ukraine. And the Russians are being obnoxious about it. The Poles called the Russian ambassador to come and explain what the heck was going on. Thank you, Crystals. The Russian ambassador refused. Thank you for that on TikTok, Crystals. The Russian ambassador refused. Now, this is disturbing. You know, I probably don't need to explain to you the danger of Russian cruise missiles flying into Poland, a NATO ally of ours, right? When cruise missiles come flying into your country, you start to worry that you're being invaded. You start to worry that it's the precursor to an invasion because the cruise missile comes and takes you out. Now, multiple cruise missiles would be an even bigger threat, but there's the danger of doing something in response, right? This is not the first time the Russians have done this. They've done this a few times. For them to be so cocky about it and say, well, we're not even going to show up, you know, when you called I may have said foreign minister, I meant the ambassador, the Polish ambassador to come, you know, to Warsaw, or he's in Warsaw, but to come to the foreign ministry and explain himself. Thank you, Bryce. That's really messed up. And it's really dangerous. It's arrogant, and it's a sign of something just really dangerous on the Russian side. Now, I will say this. They want us to say that. They want us to say, gosh, they're being so reckless. Gosh, they're being so dangerous. Because the Russians want to play, and frankly, I think Biden has fallen for this too much, but the French and the Germans have too. The French are getting really good now. I'm not sure what's up with France. Thank you, Crystals. The Germans are still a problem, meaning the Chancellor of Germany, the head of Germany, Scholz, still a big problem. Biden's still a problem in his own way. And hang on a second. Oh, the airspace, yeah. The Russians want to scare NATO. They want Biden and Scholz of Germany to say, oh my God, they could do anything. Oh my God, they could risk starting a war. We have to be careful because who knows what they'll do. They're already flying cruise missiles into Poland. That's so scary. It is, I think, because mind you, cruise missiles, the way they work, cruise missiles shouldn't just go off course a little bit into Poland, right? The Russians program these missiles quite literally like you would program a GPS, right? I mean, they literally tell it, you know, I mean, I'm making this up on my map, but let me show you for what we're talking about, right? You know, you've got Poland over here to the west, all right? You've got Belarus up here, you've got Russia up here. Russia, for example, let's say it's up here. It fires the cruise missile. The cruise missile comes like this, for example. It crosses into Polish territory a couple miles. Then it takes a hard right or hard left and goes into Ukraine. Then it goes south. Then it could go over here and finally hit its target over here. But these missiles quite literally change direction as they go along. And they change direction with very pinpoint, like GPS satellite timing, right? They don't just accidentally drive into Poland for 2 miles and then go to Ukraine. It's on purpose. And the fact that this has happened repeatedly, you should presume this is on purpose. The Russians are doing it to try to freak the Poles out. And more importantly, like I said, thank you, Crystals, they're trying to do it to freak out the Americans and the Germans. Now, one thing from Poland that I thought was really obnoxious, meaning, again, kind of dangerous on the Polish side. The Poles said, well, we had the ability to shoot down the cruise missile, but we didn't because we could tell it wasn't going to end up in Poland. We figured it was going to go to Ukraine anyway, so we didn't knock it down. Here's the thing. I understand that at this point, NATO still doesn't want to be actively shooting down Russian missiles in Ukraine. I don't know that I agree with that, but whatever, right? That's NATO's position. If a Russian cruise missile enters your airspace, you shoot it down. You don't just let it go on. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you let it go on? And, of course, I mean, there's the added benefit of by stopping it, you're literally stopping a cruise missile that was going to kill Ukrainians. So, like, you're actually saving lives at the same time, but it's a missile that has entered your territory. The first thing you should do, this is not a plane that has people. This is the thing, too. This is not a Russian plane that has people on it that's accidentally come into your territory. It's literally a flying bomb, right? And this flying bomb has entered your airspace. Take it down. There's no reason to not take it down, right? You get what I'm saying? I just thought that was very strange. Very strange for the Poles to say that. I think they are. Tigger said everyone's scared of Russia. I think that's exactly what's going on. I think the Poles figured, and maybe the Americans told them, I don't know, but the Poles figured, oh, it might be escalation, right? That word. It might be escalation if we take down the Russian missile that's entering our territory. It just seems crazy to me, you know? Now, maybe, Orc Hunter, Poland doesn't want to give away the position of their Patriot missile sites. Maybe, you know? Although I'm not sure whether the Russians can't see them anyway. And honestly, once you take down the missile, move your Patriot missile site somewhere else, you know? It just seems to me to be, I think we're afraid. I think we're afraid. Thank you, Nicholas. Little more news. Oh yeah, two more things here. Two more things. I've got sort of, this is an important story actually. So Speaker Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, MAGA, well, he's MAGA now. He was a Reagan Republican. Now he's, a Trump Republican. And he's the guy responsible in some ways for not advancing the Ukrainian aid package in the House of Representatives, the U.S. House. The U.S. Senate is run by Democrats. The U.S. House of Representatives is run by Republicans. Donald Trump has told Republicans not to pass any more aid packages for Ukraine at this point, and Republicans have obeyed him in the House of Representatives. Johnson, very weird story in the New York Times today of Johnson last month at an event back home, his district, and being really good about Ukraine. I want to read this to you because I think it's interesting. It's from the New York Times, but at the same time, keep something in mind. The guy isn't letting aid to Ukraine go ahead. So as good as he's telling his constituents about how he's so worried about Ukraine and we have to get them aid and this kind of stuff, he's literally the man responsible for stopping aid from getting to them, and he's voted multiple times against giving aid to Ukraine. Listen to this. It's kind of an amazing story. When Speaker Mike Johnson opened the floor for questions at a closed-door luncheon fundraiser in New Jersey last month, Jackie Colgan asked how, in the face of vehement opposition within his own ranks, he planned to handle aid for Ukraine. Because, right, the Trump Republicans are telling him, you better not pass aid to Ukraine or we're going to take you out of office. We're going to kick you out as Speaker. What followed was an impassioned monologue by Mr. Johnson, in which this is the top Republican in the House of Representatives, who runs the House of Representatives. Republicans have the majority there. An impassioned monologue by Mr. Johnson in which he explained why continued American aid to Kyiv was, in his view, vital, a message starkly at odds with the hard right views that have overtaken his party. He invoked his political roots as a Reagan Republican, denounced President Vladimir Putin of Russia as a madman, a madman he called Putin, interesting, and conceded the issue had forced him to walk a delicate political tightrope. Reminded by Ms. Colgan, a member of the American Coalition for Ukraine, a nonprofit advocacy group, of the adage that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil was for good people to do nothing, Mr. Johnson replied that he kept a copy of the quotation framed in his office. "That's not going to be us," he assured her. "We're going to do our job." And then the New York Times adds, he's repeatedly voted against aid for Ukraine. Guys, here's the problem. Thank you, Tigger. And I've said this before in politics. I don't care what's in your heart. I care about how you vote. Thank you, Joker. Years ago, thank you, Elizabeth. Years ago, people would tell me about how, their favorite politician, they're terrible on all the issues we care about. They're terrible on civil rights, or in this case, they're terrible on Ukraine. But in their heart, they're with us, in their heart. And I would always say, I don't care what's in your heart. I want to know how you vote. Thank you, Crystal, and thank you, Gold, and thank you, Rock, for the donut. Right? I mean, how does it benefit me? Thank you, JC. How does it benefit me that you're actually on my side, but you're going to screw me over in the actual legislation, right? So you're going to not help Ukraine. You're going to cut off American aid. Ukrainians will literally die as a result. But in your heart, you're a Reagan Republican who knows it's really important. I mean, doesn't that make it even worse, actually? Doesn't it? I mean, thank you, Diabetic, for the little crown. Doesn't it make it even worse? I'm calling you diabetic. I'm hoping diabetic-kern. Doesn't it make it even worse that he's saying, I'm a Reagan Republican. I know how important it is. I know how bad Putin is. I know how important it is to get the aid. I'm just afraid of losing my job, so I'm not going to do it. Well, right? I mean, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Gold. Thank you, Nicholas. It just, that really bothered me. I mean, at first I was like, this is really good. And then I felt like we're talking to a politician, right? The fact that behind closed doors, he's your friend. But publicly, he goes, okay, whatever. Final story. This was very interesting. This was from an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal today. Thank you, Nick. And it was just really cool. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Listen to this. Really interesting. Ukrainians put 8,000 cell phones. So listen to this, okay? It's something ingenious the Ukrainians did to spot drones from the Russians. Ukrainians put 8,000 cell phones connected to microphones. So they connected the cell phones to microphones and put these microphones and cell phones on 6-foot poles across the country to detect incoming Russian drones. They detected 84 out of 84 and shot down 80 of them with anti-artillery guns. The cost was $500 each for basically the phone microphone connection. Thank you, Derek. What's interesting about that, and I wonder if this is where they got the idea, it reminds me in American cities like New York, Chicago too, we've got this sort of thing. It's kind of scary. Your Europeans are going to think this is crazy probably. Thank you, JC, and anybody else, not even Europe. But in American cities, we've got microphones all over the cities listening for gunshots. So the police know where to go because there's gunfire. I mean, we literally have microphones to pick up gunfire because there's so many weapons used. I wonder if that was the inspiration for this because it sounds like it, doesn't it? You know, brilliant idea, really. But it sounds like it. All right, that is it for the news. I'm going to tell you really quick that we've got our auctions ending tomorrow. I do an auction every week or so, benefiting Ukraine. We get really cool stuff from Ukraine that I then auction off. 50% of the auctions of the money raised, we send back to Ukraine, and then 50% goes to support my work because I do this full time. As I've told you guys, this is my show is literally my full-time job. I pay the bills and keep the show going with all of your guys' support, the gifts and the subscriptions, but also the auctions. We've got a number of things. I've got a very cool piece of a Russian fighter jet that was shot down over Ukraine that we're auctioning off. We've got a really neat a Russian, what do you call it? Not artillery shell, but a shell from a weapon that's been turned into, I would call it a candle holder. It's beautiful. It's sort of an angel. They've turned it into an angel wing with the Ukrainians. Anyway, go check out the picture in the movie. It's gorgeous. Smaller piece, but still very cool. A fridge magnet for a refrigerator, but painted by this wonderful Ukrainian artist in the Petrikivka style, which is the traditional Ukrainian style. No patches this week. I don't think I have patches this week, do I? Wait, now you got me wondering. I was going to put this up. I don't know. I don't have access to the auctions now. Do I have any? I have this patch, but I don't know whether I have the patch up for auction today. Do I? Thank you, Nick. I think I have this patch up for auction, but I'm not recalling if it's there this week or next week. I don't know because basically I'm now using my phone to stream on YouTube for a better connection, and because I have my phone on YouTube, I can no longer check. Oh, that's not true. I can look at my computer though. Let me see. I will look really quick and tell you if the patch is up. A cute little sort of Ukrainian Easter egg, again in the Petrikivka style, that is a keychain. So very pretty keychain. Hand-painted, of course, in the Petrikivka style. Probably my favorite in some ways. All right, I'm going to open this and take a quick look. Let me look really quick. Take a quick look here to see if the flag patch. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the flag patch is absolutely positively up for auction this week. This is a VIP, though, but it's the... this is probably the most popular Ukrainian patch, military patch. Velcro on the back so that it goes on. It typically goes on the uniforms, like on the shoulder here. Sometimes it goes on other stuff, but it's the most popular Ukrainian military patch that there is. Because it's their flag. But we're auctioning one of these off, which is very pretty and very cool. So yes, this is for the VIP supporters, which are the members on everywhere else that isn't TikTok. Because TikTok, the connection's broken and TikTok hasn't fixed it, and I don't know why. But it's been broken for 2 years now, the connection from TikTok to Discord. So unfortunately, it's in the VIP area. Oh, and then finally, which I just love this too, it's a refrigerator magnet, but it is a refrigerator magnet matchbox of the famous Ukrainian stamp. It's the copy of it, of the stamp showing the Russian warship Moskva that was sunk by the Ukrainians, with the soldier flipping it off with his middle finger, which is really cool. You guys can see this. Now I'm using my phone. You guys on YouTube can actually see. And this one's cool because the matchbox itself, when you pull it out, is a Cossack, which I think is neat. And I think it says Ukrainian Armed Forces, the USF, whatever on the top, which is neat too. So very cool. I mean, and then on the back, of course, all sorts of Ukrainian on the back, which is kind of fun because it's, of course, from Ukraine. But anyway, very cool. It's very cool. So lots of cool stuff, guys. Please go check it out. As I said, the auctions benefit Ukraine and they benefit me because I do this full time. $150 for the matchbox. It's not up to that, though. I don't think it's no, we aren't bidding here. You've got to go and bid over in my Discord community. So the Discord community you can find on TikTok. Just go to my profile and look for the link in my profile. You'll see on TikTok, my profile's got the triangle, red triangles pointing down. That's pointing at the link. Click that link and you get my list of links, which includes the link to the Discord. So look for the Discord link. Go check it out. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Nordic. And there you go. And same thing for you guys. For you guys, let me pull this up. Where is this? Oops, sorry, I'm forgetting. There you are, OBS. For you guys, you can find it via aravosis.com, the link at the bottom of my screen that you type in yourself. Aravosis.com will bring up the link of links, and one of those links will be the Discord community. So check it out, please. All right, guys. Let's do our Q&A and hang out and everything else. What is a Cossack? God, I don't even know how you define a Cossack. Cossacks are like traditional community and a traditional ethnic group in southern Ukraine and Crimea. I'm pretty sure the Russians kicked a bunch of them out and sent them to Siberia, but some of them are still there. Warrior, Marie says, yeah. Yep. What kind of plate are those hanging? I'm not sure what you mean, Crystal. Sorry, what do you mean by that? Well, we can't really kick them out. Thank you, Christina. So Yael says, how could Russia, Iran, and China be part of the United Nations considering everything they've done? I mean, part of the problem is in diplomacy, we want everyone to be part of the United Nations, really, right? The idea is the United Nations is the one place we can all come together where every country is represented, and no matter how bad you are, you're still represented there so we can talk to you. So in principle, it kind of goes against the whole idea of the United Nations to kick people out, in a way, right? Having said that, they kind of kicked Taiwan out because the Chinese demanded it. So, politics is still politics, even in the United Nations, right? North Korea, that's a good question. I'm not sure how the Korean situation is represented in the United Nations. That's a very good question. Does anybody know? I have a feeling they've got a delegation, but I'm not sure how Korea is perceived there, how it's treated. I will bet you they've got a delegation, though. I'll bet you they do. I mean, you guys, I can't Google right now in front of me, but in any case, thank you, Nick, for the gifts. Oh, hey, Blue Sky, you are late, but we're just starting Q&A, so we're here for a while. Yeah, in any case, I think, like what Alan said, every country deserves the voice to discuss things. I would say rather than deserve, because I don't know if I want to say some of these bad guys deserve it, I would say it is arguably important that every country be represented, even if they're bad guys, because at least we should be talking to the bad guys, at least in the United Nations. That would be the idea, right? It's sort of the place of last resort that even the bad guys you'll talk to, right? Thank you, Nick, for all the roses. And I forgot to tell you guys at the beginning of the show to tap the screen and do the likes and everything on YouTube and TikTok. I think they help. I don't know, because it's always sort of a game trying to figure out the algorithm, like the computer program in the sky, and what tells other people to come visit the show. But we think hitting the like button, saying you like the show, on YouTube, on TikTok, it's literally, or frankly, what Nick is doing, sending lots of roses and little TikTok symbols and fingers. But it also is just like tapping the screen on TikTok, which I didn't know until maybe a year ago, that when you tap the screen, it sends a rose, which I had no idea. Or a rose or a heart. It sends a heart. Totally didn't know that. But anyway, feel free to kind of tap and like and everything else. Nick, look at you, Nick. Keep forgetting about this. So Nick just got lit up in the gift gallery. So on TikTok, there's a gift gallery that if you give a certain number of a gift, it'll put you down for the rest of the week in the gallery. It'll name you as the person who gave the most of that kind of gift until somebody else gives more, and then it resets every Monday. So whatever it is, Nick, there must be a link to the gift gallery somewhere, maybe at the top of the screen. Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Diabeticern, Monica. Lots of gifts coming in. Thank you, guys. Danik, Nick. I didn't want to miss any of you when I was talking about Nick's gift gallery thing. So yeah, check out the gift gallery. You should be there. Thank you, Adventures. French troops still going to Odessa. Larry, there are no public plans for French troops to go there that we know of. The French have been saying that basically Macron, the president of France has been saying that if the Russians march on Odessa in southern Ukraine, okay? Huge city in southern Ukraine, hugely culturally important. Thank you, Monica. I did see those. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Bryce. In southern Ukraine, if the Russians are able to basically they're not posing a threat right now. They're posing an aerial threat. They're killing people with missiles, but they're not posing a threat of taking over Odessa. If the Russians pose a threat of doing that, Macron has suggested the French would move in with troops. Similar thing if the Russians made a real push for Kyiv, not just launching missiles, but actually trying to take the capital of Ukraine. One comment as well that the French president said was, and he said this back in February, something to the effect of, in a year, we're going to have troops in Ukraine, which was very interesting. It freaked the Russians out. He's standing very tall. Derek says Macron is standing tall right now. He's standing very tall. I'm almost afraid to tell you because last time I was translating an article from Le Monde, and that's when TikTok banned me for a week. So I'm a little afraid to even tell you why Macron changed, because TikTok is weird. Literally, translating an article in French from Le Monde, and that appears to be what got me banned. I mean, Le Monde is one of the best newspapers in the world. If anything, it's a little snotty and cocky of me to be translating Le Monde for you. That's the most you could accuse me of, is being a little bit of an elitist snob. But nonetheless, I will try to say this in a way that doesn't upset our overlords. But the article in Le Monde was saying, it was a very interesting article from about 2 weeks ago, that was analyzing President Macron and why he changed so much vis-a-vis Russia, right? Remember at the beginning of the war, going into the war, right before it started, Macron kept doing the shuttle diplomacy with Putin. And he kept flying to Moscow and meeting with Putin. And we were all getting kind of annoyed because we all felt like it was, Macron was just like falling for it. Like he was, kind of sucking up to Putin or something, right? And that it wasn't going to work. And in fact, it didn't work, right? Putin invaded anyway. Fast forward to February, a number of things happened, including the Russians dropping a bomb within a couple hundred meters of the Greek prime minister who was visiting southern Ukraine with Zelensky at the time. That freaked a lot of people out, right? And the Medvedev, who's the Russian former foreign minister, who's very bombastic and says lots of crazy things, Medvedev basically said that Macron was afraid to go to, and then Macron canceled his trip to southern Ukraine, or to Ukraine in general, that he was going to do as a result of this near bombing of the Greek prime minister. And Le Monde said that Macron canceled his trip, and that right after that, this Medvedev, this former Russian official who's very bombastic, publicly claimed that Macron was afraid of going to Ukraine because the Russians might try to get him too. And then in the tweet, he suggested the Russians maybe would try to get Macron, right? When I say get, you know what I mean. I don't just mean get. I mean something very bad. Well, Macron freaked out, according to Le Monde. His people said he freaked out. He interpreted that as a threat from the Russians to literally take him out, right? And it freaked him out. And now the article didn't explain this, but I interpreted it. All the article did was say, and then several weeks later, we suddenly had Macron, who now is being the super hawk, the super, Russia is a danger. We've got to possibly send troops, right? And it seems to me, reading the article, that the link of, or the what's the word I'm looking for? The cause of Macron's change was this, what he perceived as a threat against his life from the Russians, which is very interesting. So yeah, he talks a good talk. The one thing to remember with France is France gives like nothing compared to the other European countries. Germany has given maybe $19 billion worth, and the dollar and the euro is close enough, 10% difference, whatever. Germany's given like $19 billion worth of weapons to Ukraine. France has given something like 800 million, like 1/10 the weapons in price that the Germans have. The French did provide their Scalp cruise missiles. The cruise missiles are a big deal. The Germans are being wimps about providing their cruise missiles. So there is that, but it's, France is talking a good talk on sending troops, but France is still not really sending much of anything to Ukraine. I mean, they're sending some things that are important, the cruise missiles. They've sent some armored personnel carriers that are very good. They've sent, is it the Caesars? What are they called? The artillery? That's very good. But again, in the aggregate, they've sent almost nothing compared to Germany. So, it's kind of weird. Anyway. Anyway. Yeah, the problem is, Alton's mentioning something where I think I know where he's going with this. He's saying funds that could have been used to improve the lives of Americans. The problem is, the folks who want to cut aid to Ukraine have no desire to spend those funds, no stated desire to spend those funds to improve the lives of Americans. They are not saying cut Ukraine and spend $60 billion helping veterans, helping the homeless, helping poor children, even helping the border. They're not. They're simply saying cut the money. Unfortunately, the folks that want to cut Ukraine, they're kind of a one-trick pony talking about cutting the budget. They just want to cut programs. They've recently talked about cutting Social Security and Medicare and other other entitlement programs. So if your argument for not funding Ukraine is we need to spend that money at home, you need to understand that the people who are going to cut Ukraine are the very people who refuse to spend that money at home. Guess who wants to spend more money at home? The Democrats, who are the people who want to spend more money on Ukraine. And they're willing to spend both at home and Ukraine. The other guys aren't. So you get a problem with that argument. The other issue is the two literally aren't tied. You could not find one program where you say, oh, we were going to spend money on veterans, but then we spent the money on Ukraine and there was literally no more money for veterans. No one. That's not true anywhere. There's no truth to it. You could not find one program that you say we had to cut or we didn't spend more money on this domestic program because of Ukraine. Not one. That's the problem. That's the problem. So, and you're never going to balance the budget because the deficit's too large. And by the way, if you want to balance the budget, I got news for you. Guess what cost the most in the budget? The tax cuts. And Donald Trump added $7 trillion to the budget. A lot of it was his tax cuts. A lot of it was COVID stuff too. And frankly, by the way, if you care about COVID and you blame COVID for the deficits, I got news for you. Guess who didn't think COVID was important, right? I mean, you've got to pick leaders that care about diseases, that care about pandemics, that believe in science, that believe in vaccines, right? I mean, if you don't, then you can't really complain when the disease gets out of control and ends up screwing up the budget. So, and by the way, the tax cuts too. I mean, I love getting tax cuts, but guess what? Every time there's been a tax cut, the tax cuts have cost $2 trillion dollars. Every time. The Trump tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts, around $2 trillion each one has cost. Thank you, Alexander. They've added massively to the deficit. And we've got to stop cutting taxes if we're afraid that we're adding to the deficit. So, Ukraine is not the problem. And by the way, Ukraine is literally this much of the deficit. That's the problem too. I will say this. If you're worried about the deficit, then go after the expensive stuff. But I've got news for you. Guess what the expensive stuff is? Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the U.S. military. Are you going to cut the U.S. military? Good luck with that. Are you going to cut Social Security? Good luck with that. I'd get pissed if you did that. You're going to cut Medicare? Good luck with that. Right? I mean, the really only way to cut the budget or to cut the deficit is probably raising taxes, but we keep cutting them because Republicans want to cut them. So, what do you do? So anyway, I don't know, David. I worry about this. David asks a very interesting question. If Biden gets reelected, will he push to help Ukraine more? The problem is, here's the problem with that. Biden's president now, right? Right now, he's not able to get any money for Ukraine. Now, that's because the MAGA Republicans have cut it. We know that, right? Trump has said so. I do this for a living and I live in Washington, D.C. Quite literally, Republicans in Congress have stopped Ukraine's aid package from going through. Well, Biden's already president. So Biden being reelected president doesn't change that fact because he is president and he can't get the budget through. What has to happen is something has to happen in the makeup of Congress. Now, that could happen because currently, well, a couple different things. Let's presume that Biden wins. Okay, let's presume Biden wins. Currently, the thinking is, I had a little dinner before starting here. Now I've got burp. Thank you, Nick. Nick is back for the Mongo gifts. Thank you, Nick, for the lots of little gifts. Thank you, dude. Appreciate that. Biden wins. Congress is the one that decides if they're going to spend the money. In the Senate, that is currently controlled by Democrats, it is currently believed, based on the polls and the seats that are up, that Republicans will take back the Senate, okay? That Republicans will take control of the U.S. Senate from the Democrats. Thank you, Donick. Thank you, Nick. Now, what's good about that for Ukraine is Senate Republicans are much more supportive of Ukraine. Senate Republicans even passed a Ukraine support and aid bill, right? So that actually is... I would say it's a net zero for Ukraine because Senate Democrats are already willing to support Ukraine. This would be Senate Republicans, if they get the majority, still supporting Ukraine. So that works. In the House, it gets interesting because currently MAGA Republicans are the majority. Well, Republicans are the majority in the House of Representatives, and the MAGA crowd kind of calls the shots. Whether you want to say they're the majority, they're not the majority, but even if they pretty much are the majority, I would say. They probably are a majority of Republicans now, the MAGA guys in the House. They could lose to Democrats in the fall, right? Republicans are only ahead by one seat now because of abortion, because of all these different issues we've got in the election. Republicans could lose the House. If Democrats take control of the House of Representatives, they will support Ukraine. If Republicans take control of the Senate, they will likely support Ukraine. So you could have, if Biden gets reelected, a Senate that is still supportive of Ukraine and a House that is newly supportive of Ukraine. So in that case, Biden will be able to fund Ukraine again in principle, certainly better than he can now. But it's going to depend on control of the Congress because right now, it clearly isn't working, right? So, I'm going to adjust my light a little bit there. There we go. As we go on. Other questions? Romain. Oh, hey, Romain. Thank you for following me. Merci pour le... Oh, I was saying le suivre. No, merci de me suivre. Would that be more correct? I'm trying to think. Thank you for following me. Pour m'avoir suivi. Something like that. I'm guessing by the name Romain that you're probably, and by the flag, you've got to be French. Anyway, guys, what's going on? What else we got? But yes, if Republicans take over the Senate, as Sobo just said, then they're going to stop Biden's nominations because the Senate in America has the power of approving the nominations, meaning Supreme Court nominations, even nominations for government bodies, nominations for all the other courts, Oops, I'm just curious here. I thought that's what you wrote, but I wasn't quite sure. Synth wrote in German, thank you for the flowers. And I don't speak German, but I thought that's what it said. It said danke für the Blumen. And I'm thinking Blumen, blooms. I'm not sure what flowers you're referring to, but thank you for saying that, I guess. Just get in from Sweden, so Biden win. Right now, I think it's 50-50, 50% chance that Trump wins, I think. And thank you, Romain, for the gift. And Jewish person, who I doubt is, well, maybe you're a Jewish person. Let's not do this again. Okay, sorry, it's making me prove I'm a person. No! Hold on, it's making me prove I'm a person. There we go. All right, there we go. Although I would have answered that question, I think they were probably being trolly, Big Hawk. I would have given that person one more try, just to be honest. I forgot the question already. That's one I would give one more try before I would mute somebody like that. But I suspect that person was a troll, to be honest. Christopher, when am I leaving for Bali? Around April. What is it? April 12th? Yeah. I think April 12th I fly to Asia, I think. And I'm going for 2 weeks. So I'll have to figure out when I'm there. I may be doing more Hangouts. I may be doing more TikTok videos and YouTube videos for you guys that are a little more fun travel-y, because I'm not going to be able to necessarily, I'm going for vacation basically. My nephew's getting married. So I'm probably not going to be able to spend my days reading about Ukraine, and I probably should not spend my days reading about Ukraine if I'm flying all the way to Asia for fun. So we'll have to see what I can do during those 2 weeks. So I don't remember the statue, Sobel. I've been to Indonesia before, which the funny part is I've been to Indonesia, to Bali, and to Singapore before, because my nephew's marrying a woman from Singapore, and we're going to go visit her and her family. I'm going to go visit her and her family first. And I've been to both places, which is funny because I haven't been to that many places. Well, okay. I mean, I say this because, okay. I mean, I have been to Asia, right? But I've been to Japan, I've been to the Russian Far East, and that's it, as far as places I've actually visited. So I've been to Kamchatka, if anybody who plays Risk, and I've been to Japan, and then I've been to Indonesia and Singapore. So it's funny, I'm going back to Indonesia and Singapore because I'm like, I want to go see the rest of Asia. I want to go see China. I've never been to Hawaii either. I had friends living in Hawaii and I didn't visit, which was really stupid. I mean, I could kick myself. I had a friend living in Tibet and I didn't visit. No, not Tibet. Not Tibet. He was in, was it Tibet? Up in the mountains, China. It is Tibet, I think. No, am I thinking what am I thinking? Right, Nepal. Thank you. I was going to say it wasn't that Nepal. I was going to say it was the border with India. Yeah, he was in Nepal for several years with the Peace Corps, and I didn't visit. And I'm like, are you crazy? How could I ever? Well, it's crazy because you'd think Zerpachi, right? Living in Hawaii would be like an open like people would never leave who visited you. But that's funny. I was in New York for 2 years, and I think I had one friend visit. One of my Swedish friends came, and that was it. I mean, my sister came once too, but I mean, it wasn't like a lot of people came to visit in New York. No, my friend Matt came once. That's true too, but it wasn't like I was thinking New York. I'm going to get people like my friend. None of my French friends came, and I'm like, guys, the French love New York. I'm like, visit me. Nobody came. It's like, all right. Anyway, yeah, what was the good question? Aravosis was asking. So the question somebody asked at the beginning, Mods, do you remember what it was? The one that was at the beginning? And I said, oh, could you make sure to... Rowan Beerosaurus just said, that's a nice mug. That's the mug that a 13-year-old daughter of one of our viewers made. She made the design on her computer at school. And it's like I said, it's a really pretty, really pretty. It's a nice mug. I may have to get more water in there soon. It's getting low. Was the question, okay, if Trump wins, what will happen to Ukraine? Yeah, I mean, at the risk of upsetting our overlords, but Trump has said, okay, let me step back. Trump is very difficult to figure out because I do not believe he believes in anything. So what happens if you don't believe in anything? It means potentially your view can be changed because you don't care, right? So I don't think Trump cares. Trump doesn't care about Ukraine. We know that, right? He's been very anti-Ukraine in many ways. He previously did an interview on CNN that I saw when it happened back in like 2015, 2016, that he defended Vladimir Putin's invasion of Crimea and his taking of Ukrainian Crimea by saying, well, yeah, that's cute. That's cute, Christian. By saying that, the Ukrainians speak Russian and they want to be part of Russia anyway. So he defended it. He has also said that he doesn't want us spending any money on Ukraine and that he would end the war like that. The one thing that's interesting from Trump is he's two things. One, he did say once that he actually likes Zelensky. And he says, Zelensky, when I think he said something to the effect of when we had all the, Democrats in Congress trying to impeach me for the beautiful phone call, when Trump got on the phone with Zelensky and said, I'd like you to do me a favor though, and made U.S. aid contingent on finding dirt on Biden. Trump basically said that Zelensky didn't, narc on him, basically, that Zelensky didn't like attack Trump. Zelensky said, oh, the call was fine, right? Trump likes that. So that was interesting that Trump said that. Trump has also said that that he would tell the Russians and the Ukrainians to stop fighting. And if the Ukrainians didn't, he would cut all their aid. Of course, all the aid's been cut anyway. If the Russians didn't, I would tell Putin, if you don't agree to this peace, thank you, Nick, I'm going to give Ukraine so many more weapons than you've ever seen. That was interesting. Now, I don't know whether he means it, right? But, my concern is Trump has a history of very close relations with Vladimir Putin that are so close that they kind of creep a lot of Americans out. And they certainly creep out, and this is a fact, people in the defense industry, people who are defense experts, the independent defense experts are very disturbed by Donald Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin. Therefore, there's a lot of concern as to whether Trump would do anything to help Ukraine or whether he would side with Putin and hurt Ukraine. So I think at this point, considering Trump isn't even president and he's already cut off all American aid to Ukraine by telling Republicans in Congress to do it, probably the most logical thing is to assume that Trump will do exactly what he's doing, which is cut off all aid to Ukraine, which is what he's doing right now. So that would be my guess. Will there be special elections for the reps that are leaving early? It depends on the state they're from. I don't quite know how it works. Meaning, it depends on the states, but typically state law governs whether somebody, in other words, there are a lot of Republicans that are leaving Congress early in the U.S. House of Representatives. And it typically depends on state law whether there's a special election or whether the governor, for example, appoints somebody to take the seat until the next election. Now, the next election is this fall in November. So I don't know. It depends on the state that they're from and what the state law says. They could have an election, maybe, but then they'd have the election in 3 months, and then 3 months later, 4 months later, they'd have another election, right? The lives are uploaded on YouTube and not on TikTok because TikTok ought to do it. I think it's probably the bandwidth issue, maybe, but TikTok doesn't save the lives. I mean, I have access to them, but TikTok doesn't post them, unfortunately, because I think it'd be interesting, frankly, right? They'd get a lot more viewers and stuff, but they don't do it. So YouTube, over my YouTube account, they are. You can find that link in my profile. Go to the profile, look at the link that's in there, click it, and YouTube will be one of the options. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Black Opal. Keep the gifts coming, guys. And do sign up for subscriptions. And remember, you can buy gift subscriptions, so please do those for people as well. We'd like to hand those out to folks. The gifts and subscriptions, very important for supporting my work. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Liv. What else we got? What else? The Turkish point of view on Ukraine? I don't even know. I mean, not I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But I mean, Turkey is supportive of Ukraine, but Turkey also reveres its relationships with Russia. So there's a weird, not in the way that Hungary does, which is more like vassal, right? Thank you, Nick. But Turkey didn't join in the international sanctions against Russia, for example, which is weird because they're a member of NATO. Thank you, Crystals. Right? So Turkey is having said that, Turkey sold the Bayraktars. Turkey is also opening up, I believe, a Bayraktar factory in Ukraine, I think. So, Turkey has still been very helpful. The Bayraktars were a big deal in the early months of the war. Remember the big drones. So, Turkey is way better than Hungary. I will put it that way. Hungary's been a disaster, right? In terms of supporting Russia and not supporting Ukraine. Turkey, much more nuanced. France's next move, let's see. I mean, Alor is saying France's next move. I mean, the President Macron of France has been great in supporting Ukraine. Now, he's always said the right things, but France has given very, very few weapons to Ukraine. As I said, like 1/10 of the weapons that the Germans have given in terms of cost. Who is that? Yorid? Thank you, Yorid, for the hearts. Thank you, Black Opal. Right? So the French haven't given a lot. So what they've given has been really nice. The French gave cruise missiles, these Scalp cruise missiles that are just like the British ones. They gave armored personnel carriers. They gave artillery. All of these very good, right? But the quantity of weapons they've given has been 1/10 of what the Germans have given, which is bad. Having said that, the French have been very outspoken now. President Macron in France openly talking about sending troops to Ukraine, not doing it yet, but basically saying that there is a time that they will need to be doing it. Yeah, hopefully Sasha isn't getting more sticks, but I know her she is, but I kind of just let her go. And then if she's there too long, I open the door and I yell because it means she's eating sticks again. You know what I need to do? I just actually trimmed my garden, so I've got a bunch of sticks out there, which I need to grab because it's just making it too easy for her to see the sticks and go crazy. So if you had an F-16 flying around your backyard, you donated. That's good. Oh, excuse me. Oh, you know, I don't know what's up with France. Like I said, I will say about France what I've said about, in general, members of the U.S. Congress. It's nice to talk a good talk, but you need action as well, right? Now, what is good about the French talk is there's something in politics called the Overton window, which is, I would call it the window of acceptable discourse, right? So, meaning among NATO allies, it was not acceptable discourse to even talk about sending troops to Ukraine, right? Oh my God. No one was going to suggest that, and the Russians would freak out. The French started doing it. Macron started doing it. And he started doing it again and again and again. And then the Czech government jumped in, right? Pavel, who's wonderful president of Czech Republic, he jumped in and started saying, you know what? We should consider sending troops. And then the Poles jumped in. The Polish government jumped in and said, you know what? We should consider sending troops. And then Macron, let slip that he had said, or one of his staff had told Le Monde that he had said within a year there would be French troops in Ukraine. So all of a sudden, what he's doing is he took an issue that was considered like, oh, we don't talk about that, right? Sending troops to Ukraine. Nobody would even talk of that's crazy, to now making it discussed. All right, crazy, come on in. So now suddenly we're talking about it. Now suddenly it's no longer crazy. Now talking about it is no longer as much a shock. So you've basically, it's like blowing air into a balloon. You've now taken the balloon of acceptable discourse and made it this much bigger. And now it's at least acceptable to talk about possibly sending troops. What does that do? Arguably, it makes it easier to possibly send troops at some point, because the Russians and frankly the Western countries for the next year will get used to the concept of maybe we do, maybe we don't send troops. So it's helping. Well, it is mission creep in a way, but it's not really, Paul. I would say it's not really mission creep. Mission creep is like gradually doing more because what you're doing isn't working, so that you end up, the mission keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, even though you don't want it to. In this case, it's the opposite. I think Macron is very strategically trying to increase the mission and make it more aggressive. And this is his way of, first, let's talk about it and make it acceptable to discuss. And then maybe in a few months, maybe in a year, we'll start sending those troops, right? So I would say it's the opposite of mission creep, which is a little more of an unintentional expansion of a conflict. This is a very intentional expansion, I would think. Well, here's the beauty of it, Squirrel. We don't need to send our kids. We don't need to send our kids at all because the Ukrainians are fighting for us. That is, I would say, the most amazing, and war is bad, and this war is bad. Obviously, thank you, Shergoose. But the most amazing aspect of this war is the Ukrainians are fighting for our freedom for us. We don't have to risk our lives. I almost am embarrassed even saying that because it sounds kind of horrible. But we don't have to. They are doing it for us because they're stopping the Russians. And there is concern among a number of NATO countries, the leaders of several, the defense leaders of a number of NATO countries, from the Swedes to the Brits to the French to the Norwegians, I think, and others, have said that they are very concerned. The Poles, in the next 3 to 5 years, we could be at war with Russia because Russia's going, they are afraid. Those defense leaders are afraid that Russia could move, if it is successful in Ukraine, it would be so emboldened that it could then move to declare war on the rest of Europe. That is what, again, the former defense secretary of Britain has said, what the Swedish government has said. I think it was, trying to remember, Polish, several of the other ones I've had it the other day. So yes, the Ukrainians are absolutely fighting this war for themselves, but they're fighting it for us. And by the way, that's why we're helping them. Typically, we don't really help people to be nice. No country does. We like to say that because it's nice to be nice, but when it comes down to it, you don't help people to be nice. You help people because it's in your national interest. And if it's not in your national interest, that's why, by the way, a lot of bad things have happened in the world. The United States didn't get involved in World War II or World War I originally because our people didn't want to get involved. The American public was like, you know what? Well, actually, from the American, it was very interesting, actually. I sort of learned this during watching the Roosevelts. At that era, most Americans were from Europe. Whether recently, or actually a lot of them recently, right? Especially World War II. World War II, late 1930s, early 1940s. My family had been in America 3 years, right? From Greece. And they came to America to flee the war. My grandfather was convinced the war was going to happen and take Greece, and the Germans were going to invade Greece. So he took the family and left. Well, 3 years later, now I have no idea what my grandfather felt about the war, but 3 years later, he probably didn't want to get involved in the very war that he took his family to leave. That was the issue with Americans overall. They didn't want they left Europe. They didn't want to get involved in Europe's wars, right? So we did not feel it was in our national interest until we got attacked by the Japanese and then the Germans. And we sort of turned around and said, you know what? And then America, in a big way, realized that World War II and winning it was in our national interest. So, but yeah. So there you go. Actually, Ukraine's one of the only countries, I think, that gives anything about us, Leah. I don't even know what that means. Ukraine doesn't give anything about us. First of all, the Ukrainians revere us because of the aid we give them. They're not very happy right now. But also, we're not helping Ukraine because we're like hoping they give us a merit badge or something. That's not the idea. We're helping Ukraine because it's, as I just said, in our national interest. That is why we help them. On a foreign policy, typically countries don't do foreign policy to be nice. They do foreign policy because they believe it is in the best interest of their country that a certain outcome happen. And in this case, defense experts in America certainly have decided that it is in our best interest that Russia not win in Ukraine because there is the concern they will go to war in the rest of Europe. And if they go to war in the rest of Europe, then we're not going to have a choice. And America is going to get involved in that war. Looking here. Okay, she's hanging on. The dog's going to want some water soon. Anyway, what else we got? Not necessarily Devon. I mean, Devon. Devon said would it not be World War III if the French sent troops to Ukraine? My guess is French would send troops to Ukraine as a tripwire to basically say, stop, right? If they thought the Russians were heading to take Odessa in the south or they were heading to take Kyiv, the capital in the north, the French are saying they would send troops. That is what they've said. And the reason, I believe, is they would send the troops so that it was a threat of war. So the whole idea is because the French troops are there, the hope would be that the Russians would not bomb and have the nerve to try to take the territory because they would have to literally hurt French troops to do it. And if they did that, that would lead to a larger war. So that's the thank you, my ventured life, or hey, my ventured life in southwestern France. So, you know, and I think this is true. Sometimes you're able to stop a war by threatening a war, right? That's literally how you do it. That you say, you will not cross this line, or you're going to have to deal with me. Sometimes not setting those lines is what leads to war. World War II, telling the Germans, it's okay if you take other countries, Czechoslovakia, wherever, right? That if you go and you take over these other countries, Austria, it's okay. Because we don't want, because, oh my God, if we stand up to you, it could lead to war. But it actually led to a world war. Again, the experts would tell you, the historians would tell you, because we didn't stand up to the Germans, because we didn't tell them, you know what, we're going to risk war with you by standing up and saying you'd better stop. So, deterrence, etc. Yeah, exactly, Timothy. Just looking here at the other comments and things. What else we got, guys? I agree. I think it should be, look, I've argued that NATO countries should have provided troops to Ukraine before the war. Thank you, Tom. The Russians were saying they weren't going to invade forever. Up until the invasion, the Russians said, it's propaganda, saying that we're going to invade Ukraine. I would have turned and said, great, it's propaganda. That's fabulous. Then we're going to send troops. Thank you, Tom. Because there's clearly not going to be a war. You're clearly not invading. So we will send troops to, if the Ukrainians invite us, of course, that we would send troops to be in Kyiv, to be in Odessa, to be in Donbass in eastern Ukraine, to be right everywhere, Mariupol, all around Ukraine. We're going to send military advisors. And, oh, by the way, if you invade and bomb those areas, you'll be killing NATO troops, and that will lead to a world war. But that, again, would be deterrence. Peacekeepers. We should have sent the peacekeepers. The second the Russians said, we aren't invading, we should have called them on it and said, that is amazing. And when anybody says, oh, but isn't it dangerous sending them? Of course it's not dangerous. The Russians said they're not invading. That would have been my argument. I would have been like, no, it's no problem. Right? So, anyway, that's not what we did. That's not what we did. We let Ukraine get run over, kind of, in a way. You know, but it's not an act of war, Scott. Not really. Scottish is saying troops in any form is an act of war. No, it's not. No, it's not. Troops. Why is Ukraine's a free and independent country? Why would peacekeepers be? Peacekeepers are the opposite of an act of war. Before the war, we could have sent peacekeepers all over Ukraine. They could have been unarmed, so that Russia couldn't say they were an act of war. They make them unarmed, right? They're simply there. Literally, the only threat they pose is if Russia were to invade and attack them. Well, that's not our fault, you know. Anyway. Yeah, no, it's not at all. We have lots of foreign troops in the U.S., by the way, right? I mean, a lot of NATO troops. I know there's a Canadian contingent because I used to follow I haven't seen him pop up. Canada had a wonderful, Canada in the U.S., Canadian forces in the U.S., their Twitter account was really good. I don't know that I haven't seen it pop up at all, but up until about a year ago, it was so good. Amazing. Well, Javi, the problem is your kids may go to war anyway, which is why sometimes you have to stand up to bad guys, which we learned in World War II. Especially that sometimes the best way to guarantee that there's a war is to say, I'm not sending my kids to war, and then America doesn't get involved, and the Europeans don't get involved, and they don't stand up to the Germans because they didn't want a war. And what did the Germans do? They took it as a sign that we were weak, and they declared war. So, again, the reason we're helping the Ukrainians is so that we don't have to go to war. And if the Ukrainians lose, a lot of the European defense, the Europeans, President Macron of France is saying that he believes there's a risk of a larger war in Europe if the Ukrainians lose, he's now saying. Other European leaders have said the same from Eastern Europe. So that would be my result. Now, from that serious topic, my sister got me a really cool new thing that she said I should use this for the trolls. We got it off of Amazon. I'm not sure there's anything right now, but basically it repeats what you say. She's like, you've got to use it for the trolls. But let's say, Russia is losing. Russia is losing. Russia is losing, dude. Oh, God, that laugh was horrific. Oh, God, turn it off. That laugh was horrific. Oh, God. It must have a little, presetting about laughing. Oh, that was demonic. Oh, my God. Anyway, very funny. Yes, we have to find uses for this. I'm not sure what it would be. Certainly when we get the Russia is losing dude is pretty good, but that laughter was nasty. Well, I'm not sure what else to have it say at this point. We do have the goat, although actually, let's see what it does. Let's see what it does copying the goat. Oh, that was too funny. Oh, that was actually very funny. That was great. It screams like the goat. You know what you need to do? You know what? Oh, you know what I need to do? I need to get 2 or 3 of these and just set them next to each other and see if they like, because you can imagine like the, oh, we may have to try that. I think we may just have to try that. I know, hiding it in your closet. Oh my God. Yeah, it's on Amazon. I forget what it's called. It's like Talking Chipmunk or something. It's kind of cute too. It was like $9, $10. It was cheap, but it is very funny. I may have to try a couple of these. Yeah, sell them. That's true. We could sell them. I'll use it on the show and then we'll auction it off. Oh my God. That was absolutely hilarious. Oh, and the dog is eating stuff again. Sasha, come on. Really? Kidding. Oh my God. See, this is why you drive me. Literally hanging from her mouth, okay? Hanging from her mouth is like a piece of bamboo because I cut the bamboo today. I cut the bamboo and I cut the bamboo and I cut my and then the neighbor's dog. And now she's hearing the neighbor's dog. Oh God. Oh God. Sasha. Because she likes to go play with him after the show, which we do sometimes, but not right now because the show isn't over. Although the show, we're getting close to over. We've been an hour and a half. All right, let me do a quick review, guys, and then we'll call it quits because we've been doing an hour and a half. So let me pull this up. Hang on. Here we go. All right, let me do a quick review of the news, and then we will be back tomorrow, same bat time, so 6 o'clock Eastern time, U.S. tomorrow. Be sure to join us again, as always. Maybe do a last-minute little gift if you want, or a subscription on either TikTok or YouTube. Would love you for it. Otherwise, thank you for the subscribers that are here today. Let me just look really quick. Ash, Allie, Courtney. I'm looking on TikTok now. Larissa, Liv. Who else is here? So I'm looking. Tom, Marie. Oops. Felicia. I'm not going to go back all the way. Allie, blah, blah. Oops. Deb. I don't want to miss anybody. Jen. Adventures. Dawn. Okay, I'm not going to go back too far. Thank you. Who was that? Jetta and Adventures. Thank you, guys. Wait, who was the... That was Adventures. Okay, and Jetta. Yeah, thank you, guys. And then, again, really quick, the subscribers that are with us recently on YouTube. We've got Jens and Mike, Chris, Jillian. Disgruntled. Thank you, Flower Lady. And Tom. Carl. Kay. Chris, I think I got you. Chris QT. Ben. James. Jens. Sick. Jillian. Otanbot. Mike. Brendy. Okay, I'm gonna quit now, but I think that's, yeah, I got a lot of you there. Thank you. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Liv. Towards a soundboard. I do need to get a soundboard. I know. Well, I told you I've got an app, but I don't quite understand how to use it. Thank you, Malithos, for that. I need to figure out. Oh, actually, the app's not going to help me now because I've got the app on my phone or my iPad, and the iPad is how I stream to TikTok, and my phone is how I'm streaming to YouTube now because that's how I'm able to do that is how I'm now able to do a good video to YouTube because I'm using my phone. So I can't use the soundboard, which is kind of sucky, unfortunately. I mean, I don't think I want a soundboard, right? Electronic one would be better, but I don't want to buy a second iPad. That would be a bit much. Russell's saying second iPad. Oh, I mean, let's see. That might be a bit much, but we can see. Anyway, all right, let me do the news, guys. We'll do news roundup here. So thank you, everybody, for helping. Tree Robitaille totally makes me think of Romper Room every time I do that. That's very funny. Whenever I do the calling out names, I totally thought about that. All right, it's day 759 of Putin's special 3-day military operation. I give you lots of updates on the Moscow terror attack, 137 killed. And then talked about how the Russians keep not really changing their story. They're still trying to blame it on Ukraine, and they're still trying to blame the West as well. It was ISIS. U.S. intelligence says ISIS. ISIS says it was ISIS. Institute for the Study of War says it was ISIS. BBC says it was probably ISIS. Everybody thinks it was ISIS. The Russians are trying to blame the Ukrainians and us. Big surprise on that one. Ukrainians this weekend hit a communication center in Crimea, 2 or actually possibly 3 Russian warships and multiple oil refineries as well, which is a big deal. Russian missiles entered Poland again. The Poles demanded the Russian ambassador come to the foreign ministry to explain it, and the Russians refused, which is not a good sign. It will take years to restore Zaporizhia's Dnipro hydroelectric power plant that the Russians hit this weekend in a missile strike. We then talked about a New York Times article about Speaker Johnson, who's the top Republican in the House of Representatives. Very interesting article because it talks about how at a closed-door luncheon last week for donors, he was super pro-Ukraine, invoking Ronald Reagan. He called Putin a madman, but then doesn't go and help Ukraine. So, you know. And finally, a Wall Street Journal opinion piece by General James Hecker, commander of U.S. Air Forces Europe, says that the Ukrainians put 8,000 cell phones connected to microphones on 6-foot poles around the country, that's 2 meters, to detect incoming Russian drones, and they successfully detected 100% of the drones, and they were able to shoot down 80 of them with anti-air weapons. So kind of cool new tech that the Ukrainians are doing, which is kind of neat. So, all right, guys, we've been doing this for an hour and 40 minutes, so I'm going to go. I'm always trying to protect my voice a little bit here. Thank you all. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, mods. Thank you all for the gifts. Thank you, members, for already being members. Thank you, new members tonight. A couple of you also bought membership gifts. At least one of you did. I don't know if it was Jens. I'm already forgetting who that was. But bought membership gifts for other folks that were able to get them. That was very generous of you. And no problem, John. And yeah, we got 135,000 likes tonight. That's not bad. That's pretty good. I think we try to break 100. I think once we're over 100, it's pretty good. Yeah, I think so. On TikTok. So, all right, guys. Thank you, Fred. So tomorrow, the show every night is Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, U.S. So join us tomorrow, and I will see you guys then. All right. So thank you all. I'm gonna go have a little more dinner. I had half my dinner before the show. Thank you, Jen. And I will see you guys mañana. All right. All right. Thank you, Jay Che or Jay Ches or Jay Che. All right, you guys.